In this video, we'll be creating life, programmatically speaking. We will have two parents breed and end up with a child, and that child will randomly be generated as a male or a female, and based on the properties of their parents, they will end up with a hair color that is either brown or blonde, and eye color that is either blue or brown. This is the result then of lesson 8 in my browser here, and each time that I refresh my browser window we get a new child born, and as you can see it changes from male to female. The hair color is randomly generated and the eye color is randomly generated. Again, this is based on the parents, where we've already established the parents' values or properties for their hair color and their eye color, and of course their sex. So I thought this would be a good demonstration of inheritance. So here we are in Flash Builder. In order to get our inheritance started, we will be building our parent class. So what I did here is I just generated a new project like you've been doing in all the previous lessons and named it lesson 8. So the lesson 08.as file, action script file, has already been created for us. But that's the last file that we're going to work on in this exercise. In order to demonstrate inheritance, we're going to first create a parent class, and then we will derive two subclasses from that parent class, a mother class and a father class. And then we'll go into lesson 8 and generate the whole building of new humans process, or the creating of children from those parents. So to start and to create the action script file for the parent class, we're going to right click on our source folder here under lesson 8, choose new, and then choose action script class. And for the name we'll just type in parent. Class name should begin with a cap, so make it a capital P for parent. Go ahead and click finish. And so our new class is created here for us. We need to add a few variables and 3 functions that will modify then the values of each of those variables. So the first variable that I'm going to create is the sex variable. So this will define the sex of each parent, and it is a string. The next variable is going to be hair color, also a string. And the last variable is eye color, also a string. Now what we want to do is we want to set each of those string values to an empty string. So we're just going to do an assignment here of each variable and assign it to a blank text string. So there's each of our 3 variables, each one assigned a blank string. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create the functions that will be used by the derivatives, by the subclasses that we'll create that will be based on parent, that will allow us to actually assign new values to each of these variables. So I'm creating the set sex function here, and in order to change the sex variable we're going to pass a string to it that will be generated by the subclass. So when I create this subclass, I'm going to create a mother class and a father class, and we'll pass the variable then into this function that will actually assign their particular sex to our sex variable. So you can see that we're just passing a string into the function, and that string value, which is defined as new sex, is being assigned to our original variable, which is sex. We're just going to do the same process then for each of our 3 variables that we originally established. So here's a function that's going to change the hair color value. So again, we're just passing in this case, new color as a string, and that's going to be assigned then to our original variable called hair color. And then we'll do that one more time for eye color. Of course, notice that we're typing these variables as we list them as the arguments for each of the functions that we're creating. Okay, so that is going to be our parent class that we'll be using now to create 2 subclasses. One will be the mother subclass, the other will be the father subclass. And in there, what we'll do is we'll actually type in the values that we want for sex, for hair color, and for eye color for each of the 2 individual parents. So we'll go ahead and save this file. Now to create another new AS file, ActionScript file, which will be our subclass now to parent class. Again, we right click on the source folder. We choose the new option, and again we choose ActionScript class. We'll create the mother class, and now we want to identify that that is an extension of or based on this superclass that we just created here, which is parent. Click Finish, and you'll see that the Flash Builder program automatically then extends parent for us in the creation of the mother class. And it invokes the parent's constructor method by adding the super parentheses here as the first line of the mother constructor method. Now mother and father are going to be quite easy to create, because what we're going to do is we're just going to simply call the function from that parent class and pass the values to it that we want to assign for each of our three properties. So just to remind you, now what we've got going on here is that the mother class is inheriting from the parent class, and so the set sex method, the set hair color method, and the set eye color method have already been defined back here in that parent class. Remember, here's set sex, set hair color, and set eye color, which is part of the parent class. So in the case of mother, we are assigning specific values now: sex of female, hair color of brown, and eye color of brown. And then we'll go ahead and save that file. And then we'll create another subclass here, another derivative of the parent class, which will be the father class. So let's right click on the source folder, choose new, again choose ActionScript class, type in father for the name, and again this is going to be based on that parent class that we first created. And then again all we're going to do is just simply use the methods from the parent class to assign new values to each of our three properties. And you're not locked into any of these values that I'm putting in here. If you want to get creative, you can put green hair color in there if you'd like. Give them purple eyes if you choose. So here now we've created the father class, and the father class again is just an extension of the parent class, and we're calling each of the three methods and assigning the values to the sex, hair color, and eye color property using each of those three methods. So those are the objects, the classes that we're using to demonstrate inheritance here. Having father and having mother each extend that parent class that we originally created. Now we'll move on and create the code in our lesson 8 ActionScript file. And so in lesson 8, this is where most of the activity is taking place. We've got two import statements here. As always, we're going to be extending a sprite, so again we include the display package that has the sprite class in it. And then also I've added an asterisk in here so that all the classes will be loaded for the text package. So in the lesson 8 class, we begin with our instance variables. We're going to create three text fields. The first one is going to be named sex, the second one is going to be named hair color, and the third one is going to be named eye color. In the constructor method, we'll be calling two functions. One will be the makeBaby function, and the other will be the showBaby function. So makeBaby does that. It is going to randomly generate a number and define whether or not we want to choose the father or the mother as the one that's going to be the derivative for the property that it gets assigned to the child that we're creating here. And then showBaby is just simply to display the text field in the screen, which will show the results then of our makeBaby function. So if you take a look at makeBaby down here, you'll see that I've taken our three text fields and I've started by assigning a string to each of those three text fields. And then what we'll do is we'll append to the text properties of each of these text fields after we've calculated what each of the new property values will be. So this is just the kind of like the label, the text string that will appear right before we see the property on the screen. To actually generate what those properties are going to be, we then use the append text method of our text field and use another method that we're going to create up above here called nature, that's going to actually define whether this is the father or the mother that we're going to be pulling the value from for sex. And then the same thing here. Nature is going to decide whether it's the mother or the father that determines the hair color, and nature is going to define which parent is going to define the eye color. So let's take a look at nature, which is this function up here. And it's a very simple function. What you'll see is that I've just created two variables here. One is a number, the other is an object. So the object is what's actually being passed back to this call of the method nature right here as we're appending each of our text fields. So as we call nature, we're expecting some information to be returned back in place of where we now see this method nature. And what will be returned back will be either parent 1 or parent 2, in other words, mother or father. And so when we create functions normally, if you think back to other functions we've created, we've always had this colon void after the function name, as you see here with show baby and as we see here with make baby. Because void means that those functions don't return anything. They don't return any values. Now for the nature function though, you'll see that I have colon object. So that's indicating that when we call the nature function, we expect it's going to return an object back to wherever it was called from. And in this case, it's being called from down here in make baby as we append the text to each of our three text fields. So the selector variable again is a number, and then we have a parent variable, which is our object. And so that's the object that's eventually going to be returned back to this calling method. Then we also have a usage here of the math class. In fact, two usages of the math class. In the inner parentheses, we're generating a random number. And when you do math.random, parenthesis, open and close parentheses, that's just generating a number that's greater than 0 and less than 1. And of course, that's going to be some sort of a decimal value. In order to make sure that we end up with an integer that is either 0 or 1, which is what we want in this case, because a 0 is going to indicate it's the mother, a 1 is going to indicate it's the father, we need to round this randomly generated number. And so we apply the math round method to this randomly generated number. When we do that, it's going to look at the decimal that's randomly generated and determine if it's less than 0.5, it's going to round it down to 0. If it is greater than 0.5, then it's going to round it to the number 1. So we'll end up with an integer, either 0 or 1, as the result. Then we use a switch statement with the selector variable, so that's our number that's been generated, our randomly generated integer of either a 0 or a 1. And the switch statement then is just identifying through the case statement of a 0 that our parent, which remember is the object that we defined here, is going to be equal to a new mother, or an instance of the mother class. So in other words, if a random number is generated that is an integer when rounded is an integer of 0, the parent is going to be a mother instance, or an instance of the mother class. If this randomly generated number when rounded is a 1, then our parent object is going to be an instance of the father class. So that now, as you can see here with the return statement, is the parent object being passed back to the calling method here of nature. And so it's coming back as either being an instance of mother or an instance of father. So each time that we apply this method of nature, it's randomly generating a new object that's either mother or father. Then what we're saying is just basically go in and look at what is the property for, in this case, the sex of that object, either mother or father, and append that to our text field, which we've called sex. And then we run that same process again, and we find out whether the parent is either a mother or a father. Depending on which one it is, we'll then take the hair color value of that particular object, parent, father, or mother, and append it to the hair color property, or the hair color text field, I should say. And then we run nature a third time. So each time that we run nature, of course, we're getting a new randomly generated number. So it could be mother, it could be father, either time that's returned back here. And so we're picking up either the mother or father's eye color in this third run of nature, and then appending it to our text field, which is called eye color. Then finally we have the show baby function. This is just simply putting everything, positioning it on the display, and then adding it to the display. So you can see that our sex text field, we're establishing its vertical position at 0, and then we're auto sizing that field, and then we're doing the same thing for hair color, putting it at 20 vertical, auto sizing it. Same thing for eye color, putting it at 40 pixels vertical and auto sizing it. Then we add each of the 3 text fields to the display list, and that's all there is to it. So again, when we go ahead and run this, we are now going to see the results. So here's the text that you see here is the text that we started out by assigning to our text string initially. So if you look at the browser, we're comparing that to what's in red here in Flash Builder. And then the next 3 lines in the make baby function are what's generating the results that we see here. Randomly generating whether it's the mother or the father that we're pulling the property from, and then assigning that back to the appropriate text field. So in this case, we had a female with brown hair, blue eyes. If I refresh again, now we have a male with brown hair and brown eyes. So the sex obviously was derived from the parent that was the male. The hair color was derived from the female, and the eye color was derived from the female. Run this again. So now this time the sex was derived from the female, so was the hair color, so was the eye color. We'll run this again. This time we have again a male that is the sex, and then brown for eye color and hair color, which is derived from the female. And so we're getting that mostly, but here's an example of female being the sex and the hair color, but the eye color being derived from the father. And so you can just keep running this and see that it will randomly generate each of the 3 properties each time that you refresh your browser window. So that's all there is to Lesson 8. Go ahead and compile it and post your Swift file, and then I'll be able to give you a score for it. Like I said, if you want to have fun with this, go ahead and change the hair color or the eye color. You could even make up a new sex if you wanted to. Just remember that all of those 3 properties are derived from the father class. That's where we got male, blonde, and blue. And the mother class, that's where we have female, brown, and brown. So if you want to change those text strings to something else, feel free to have fun with that too.